Hi, how are you all? Now, my name's Jack Smith, for those of you that don't know me. I think most of you do know me. I've been around here for quite a while now. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Dark and Young people, whose land we're now filming this on. I would also like to acknowledge our elders, past and present. And I would also like to acknowledge three people who've made this journey possible and for this film to be made. And that's Elisa, Bruce and Gabby. As an elder within the Dark and Young community, I would like to take you on our journey. Our journey to Canberra to listen to Prime Minister Rudd say sorry to the stolen generation on behalf of the Australian government and to all Australian people. I think I speak on all of us who travelled on this journey. It was one of the most moving moments that one can experience in one's life. And if there was any, this was one of those moments. And I'd like to thank you and those that would have contributed to our journey. Thank you.
I'm Faye DeLowry and I'm really looking forward to it. I trace my family tree and I'm a Kamilaroi woman and they moved to Warren and around that area. But today I'm really excited about going down to Canberra for this day.
Emotional because I was only looking out the window and I could feel tears coming into my eyes because it should have been said long ago, long time ago.
For a Prime Minister to say sorry and bring everybody together, to me he's a man. For saying he definitely is a man.
It's only just the start. He's only got one little toe in, but it needs to be more to be given, you know, before we can really find that peace.
It reaffirms our identity, it reaffirms our culture, reaffirms, who we are as Aboriginal people in Australia. We are the first peoples in Australia, and I don't think that we should forget that.
And I think it'll do Australia and all our people the best for Rudd to say sorry and a lot more understanding and maybe bring us closer together and to respect each other, and Australians will respect us a lot better ourselves.
Kevin Rudd the big start. Kevin Rudd the big start.
This is another one of those important and significant days in my life, as with the referendum, the land rights, the tent embassy, as with all the most important events in Australian history today.
The healing process has to start from somewhere. Fix the past to thrive for the future, for the next generation. This is just the beginning, I think.
It will never, ever make up to for my father and his brothers and sisters that were all taken away when they were kids.
It means the biggest historical thing in Aboriginal history. It's about bloody time one government does it.
I hope it means the same to all those people that were affected, and I hope that it's some compensation for their sorry and trouble.
Should have been done years ago. There's been enough Prime Ministers to do it, and I've had the guts by this bloke.
Today's the start of our new future.
We, I guess, of thousands of Aboriginal people that are converging on Canberra. It's probably one of the most historical days in Aboriginal history, in Australian history, where the government has promised in the last election actually to apologise to Aboriginal people in the stolen generation.
There you go.
Good morning.
How are you, Lila?
So it's well over 230 years since European colonisation of Australia, and I guess what Aboriginal people have been through for all those years. So it's very significant in that way.
I just wanted to come and get a photo of John in the car and I didn't believe what they had done.
Let the Parliament reflect for a moment on the following facts. That between 1910 and 1970, between 10 and 30% of Indigenous children were forcibly taken from their mothers and fathers. That as a result, up to 50,000 children were forcibly taken from their families. That this was the product of the deliberate, calculated policies of the state as reflected in the explicit powers given to them under statute.
I know some people of the other side, the Liberals, they say so-called. They always state so-called stuff.
Because this is the shame about our history, because the Aboriginal history's never been told truthfully. I mean, the things they did were absolutely shocking. And that, I mean, it was terrible what they did to little children, babies, everything.
Well, for me, I am a member of the stolen generation, as was my mother. And to me, it's a tribute to my mother, who had 6 children. All of us were removed and she only brought up one. So when he says sorry today, that's a tribute to my mum's strength. There's only me and my brother left. I found John in 2000 and the other children had all died before I located them. And of course Mum died in 1982, so
I know how this sounds.
Yeah, a long time coming.
My great auntie, they travelled from Kempsey and they used to travel by night and hide by day, all the way down to the south coast. They did that.
I've been on the Aboriginal Protection Board Act and I've seen the kids being taken in front of me cousins and stuff like that. Like I've seen my cousin being taken and stuff. A few of them came back and I'm missing one. And I don't think she ever went back home. And like I'm saying, I was telling my missus, I said, look, I might see her down here today, but I wouldn't know her, you know. And I'd like to see us get together and stuff like that and sort of do that, but it'd be nice to see it. Oh, you know, I can still see it now, I'm talking about it. You know, and I was only a kid myself, you know, and stuff like that, but I've seen it.
Jenny and I was only talking last night about people on each side of us was all taken away. We wondered why we were never taken away, and I said to Jennifer, I totally believe it was because our mum, she was the housekeeper at the sergeant's home, and he didn't want to lose a good housekeeper like, and welfare officer and the police sergeant came to our place one day, knocked on the door and said to my mum, we want to come and check your house and see if it's clean and all this. And so my mum went off, she said, who do you think you are, to the big sergeant? She said, I'm over there cleaning up the shit in your house every day. So, you know, she said, so don't come here, she said, look and see how clean my house is. So we were brought up, we've experienced it all, we've lived through it all.
My mother was a stolen generation and she was a Wiradjuri tribe. Her brothers and sisters were taken, and so I'm very proud to be here to represent them. Most of them are all gone, there's nobody left today.
Having my father away at war and my mother gave birth to me in Redfern, and I was actually taken away for a week.
Wow.
And it was my grandfather, who was not white. He got me back to my mother because she was a single woman, well not single but by herself, you know, young Aboriginal woman. So it's very, very significant for all Aboriginal people right throughout Australia, especially my sort of generation.
My dad was about 5 or 6 when he was taken, and he's seen some of it, he's caught up with some of his family, but there was about 3 or 4, maybe even more, that he never ever seen again in his lifetime. But I met an auntie, and when my dad finally got to meet her, it was about 35 or 36 years. And the same when he met a couple of brothers from that. It'll never give them back that, if they were here today, they'll never get that back, that they met up with their family and they knew their family, their brothers and sisters. And that's, I don't know if it's a consolation or what.
I wasn't even registered until I was 16, because see, my mum, as auntie, had already had 8 children taken away from her, See, so mum lived in that era where children, so I was protected so that I wouldn't get taken. That's why I wasn't registered till I was 16,
I myself wasn't taken from my parents, but my 3 girls were taken from me. They were, the people said they'd be brought back by Christmas, and they lied to me. They didn't bring them back at all. They never come back. Next thing I knew, I was in court, and they were taken from me.
My dad hid it for years. Okay, he died, and I said, no, we're making it grow. We'll continue our culture and history. He was made to put it underground. He escaped from 30-odd foster families before he was 5, and he lived on the streets in Sydney all the time. And that was the size of it. And he grew up, and he didn't want us to know it because he didn't want us to be treated how he was.
That this policy was taken to such extremes by some in administrative authority that the forced extractions of children of so-called mixed lineage was seen as part of a broader policy of dealing with, quote, the problem of the Aboriginal population, unquote. One of the most notorious examples of this approach was from the Northern Territory Protector of Natives, who stated, and I quote, "Generally by the 5th and invariably by the 6th generation, all native characteristics of the Australian Aborigine are eradicated. The problem of our half-castes, to quote the Protector, will quickly be eliminated by the complete disappearance of the black race and the swift submergence of their progeny in the white."
Past government policies, which were, of course, the Protection Board and the assimilation policies, which actually had a hidden agenda of cultural genocide. And proud to be able to attend and support those people who survived all that.
Do you think it would bring
shameful business?
Yeah.
But which church would care for them? The kids were simply told to line up in 3 lines. Nana Fijo and her sisters stood in the middle line, her older brother and cousin on her left. Those on the left were told that they had become Catholics, those in the middle, Methodists, and those on the right, Church of England. That's how the complex questions of post-Reformation theology were resolved in the Australian outback in the 1930s. It was as crude as that.
I'm a pastor, but I realise that the church has done a lot wrong down through the years, and we've come to that point where we recognise that we too got to answer for a lot.
Put simply, the laws that our parliaments enacted made the stolen generations possible. We, the parliaments of the nation, are ultimately responsible. Not those who gave effect to our laws. The problem lay with the laws themselves.
I just think to myself, well, is it so difficult to say how many little words, I'm sorry, 2 little words, to say you're sorry for what's happened to the people? Could you imagine your little kids taken away? You know how it is.
That's right.
And it's a shocking thing, and they say, oh yeah, but it's for the best. Well, it's not for the best.
I say to non-Indigenous Australians listening today, those who may not fully understand why we are doing what we are doing is so important, I ask those non-Indigenous Australians to imagine for a moment if this had happened to you. I say to honourable members here present, imagine if this had happened to us. Imagine the crippling effect. Imagine how hard it would be to forgive.
The white fellas don't understand, I mean, what if we went as a people, just went and took their kids and see how they'd feel? Shoes on the other foot.
Then thinking about the elders and what they've suffered personally and endured that we haven't seen ourselves, it's painful enough for me, or just that thought, than to think their pain is 100 times more.
The nightmares that them fellas got to go through, you know, I wasn't taken away, but when I hear the stories of them fellas, you know, it's just hard. It just rips your guts clean out, and you can sit down and you can take yourself back just to imagine the stories of what they're telling you and all that there, and put yourself in that situation. But the biggest thing for me is that they survived, and so did we.
Well, my father was adopted out and taken from Adelaide to Sydney and put in Crow's Nest Hospital and all that hidden stuff, and years of finding 3 birth certificates before you find the right one.
This is not, as some would argue, a black armband view of history. It's just the truth. The cold, confronting, uncomfortable truth. Facing with it, dealing with it, moving on from it. And until we fully confront that truth, there will always be a shadow hanging over us and our future as a fully united and fully reconciled people.
Very important for Darkinjung young people to be there, being one of the first areas with colonisation and first contact. So I think it's a very significant thing for us to represent, you know, the land that we live in as Darkinjung.
Yeah, very affected. In my family, it's only my father, and on my side of the line, that's Aboriginal. On my mother's side, it's different nationalities, but they were also taken away by government, on the white side as well as the black. But it affects you a lot, not knowing where you're from and who your mob is, and growing up with your grandmothers and your mothers and aunties and uncles.
We offer this apology to the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters, the families and the communities whose lives were ripped apart by the actions of successive governments under successive parliaments.
We were talking the other night, and you know, we all just said we're all members of the stolen generation in one way or another, and we are.
You know, I've got an email from an old uncle of mine in his 80s yesterday. He's going to be down in Canberra, and he wrote and talked about, you know, we've been hurt, we've been discriminated against, and that we may not have been taken away, but we were hurt severely in that, you know, with the abuse, the rapes, and not allowed in the pubs and shops and all that. So it's still a living history in that.
My grandmother and all those brothers and sisters were in the stolen generations. Yeah, but for me personally, it affected me where I couldn't see, you know, I never got the chance to really meet my grandmother in that there because she was alcoholic and them sorts of things, always in one place, and, you know, moved around a lot. But, so yeah, that's how it's affected me and my siblings.
As much as it means a lot for us younger ones, especially our blood's being mixed and our families being separated, especially like for people like myself who took them a while to find where your mob's from, etc.
It's affected, I think, every one of us as Aboriginal people. It's affected the whole society as one, with loss of culture, with loss of knowing where you come from, dispossession.
They worked and got a sixpence, and the government put the shilling into the reserve and built houses and things with our money. As at 1938, she was owed £5.15.
With a white mum as well, you know, and it was sort of hard in those days, sort of thing, But anyway, Dad was a really, really beautiful, good provider and cared for his wife and his children and stuff like that, So that's why today I'm so proud.
We were put in missions and made to lose our language and made to stay there, not go anywhere. Don't develop, don't learn, don't be educated, you know. Put under a strict government regime.
Just ask some of the cultural dancers if they could come towards this area, but what's going to happen?
My mother wasn't recognised with my father because he wasn't allowed to live in the mission because he was a white Australian, but a very good person, and he looked after us, and he was away lots of times working and things like that for 6 months at a time, a drover, and she had to live by herself and look after 4 little children, and it was very hard for a woman them days.
Well, we weren't allowed to go to high school.
No.
We could only go to the 6th class in our Aboriginal mission.
They weren't allowed to speak their language or use their names.
Weren't allowed to, go into swimming pools, weren't allowed to go into shops.
Pictures.
How many years since television came in? It was about 50 years or something, 50 years. And 40 years since the referendum. Now, isn't it ridiculous? And the Aboriginal have been in Australia for how many years? 70,000 or 60 to 70,000 years. It's just ridiculous, when you think about it and put it all in proportion. It's crazy. It took all that time just to, and our own original people who come from the country, we weren't even recognised. It's crazy.
Stop the innovation in the territory! Stop the innovation in the territory! Stop the innovation in the territory!
This land is mine. All the way.
How are you going to be treated? We can manage our own things. We know how to do it and how to look after our kids. We want to be treated as human beings. We got human rights to do it.
This land is mine. Yeah, signed on the dotted line. Campfires on the creek bed. Bank breathing down my neck. They won't take it away. They won't take it away. They won't take it away from me. This land is me. Rock, water, animal, tree. They are my song. My beings here where I belong. This land owns me from generations past to infinity.
We look forward to the day when not we join you in being whole Australians, because we recognise this whole country comes from first Australians, is from first Australians, and we are here as custodians in sharing with the people who have kept this continent so beautiful, so magnificent, down through time immemorial. We're on the road, but we are not yet there, and we will be with you down that road to the trees.
This land is mine. This land is me. They won't take it away. They won't take it away. They won't take it away from me.
Government business, notice number 1, motion offering an apology to Australia's Indigenous peoples.
We'll be having its apology speech to the stolen generations. The generations of Indigenous people who were forcibly removed from their homes and placed in state or foster care, and the incredible and disturbing results that it had on many people. So it's a big event in Australian political history, and it's fantastic that the government will be marking an end to turning a blind eye to what happened in the past.
Stayed until about 9:30 last night.
Did they have the beach players?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had different bands and people talking and stuff, doing like speeches about what's going on and that. Yeah, it was just a great atmosphere. Everyone was dancing and cheering.
The story's right, the story's true. I would not tell lies to you, like the promise said they did not keep, and how they fenced us in like sheep. Said to us, come take our hand, set us up on mission. We're here. Told us to read, to write and pray.
Mr. Speaker.
Today we honour the Indigenous peoples of this land, the oldest continuing cultures in human history. We reflect on their past mistreatment. We reflect in particular on the mistreatment of those who were stolen generations, this blemished chapter in our national history. The time has now come for the nation to turn a new page. A new page in Australia's history by righting the wrongs of the past and so moving forward with confidence to the future.
It's a positive step in the right direction. You know, we've been worked so long to hear the Prime Minister on behalf of the government to say sorry, and today they said it. And they said it to us, who were the ones taken away and placed in institutions through their mad rules and thinking they were doing good when they were doing so bad, you know. I don't know anyone in their right mind can think separating kids from parents is a good thing. Exactly. I don't get it, I don't get it. And I think they've found out now it wasn't the best way to go.
The kids, it was good to see the kids get a very tangible idea. They could see how big the crowd was, how important this was, very tangible. It wasn't a number or a figure, they could see it and they were part of this huge group of people, and that was awesome to see them excited. You know, it's a step towards our next question, which is when's sovereignty?
It was really special because I got chosen out of heaps of kids come down here.
Well, it gave a bit of closure to all of our people, I suppose, and it was like the first sort of step to reconciliation, and it's been a long time what we've all been waiting for, and like makes me proud to know that I'm one of the lucky few to be here to witness and experience.
It was good to see all Aboriginal people unite and come together, all different colours, all different mobs, Noongar all the way over to Kooris, all over the country. So it was good to have everyone together. The kids, I think, it was some of their time, they'd never met other Aboriginal cultures, so it was awesome, they loved it.
So many denial, unable to get what's important to each of us, to give us our own solid identity of who we are. Each in our own place where we each come from. We've got our own laws, what we call chukopa, you know.
Oh, that's right.
When you're taken away from that, who are you?
Exactly, you become, lost.
No, well, cool. I just say nothing.
Nothing.
And you try and exist the best you can, being nothing.
It was a wonderful moment in history, very proud and very honoured to be there, and I do say to my ancestors, I just wish you were here.
said you've got to understand. We'll give to them what you can't give. Teach them how to really live. Teach them how to live themselves. Humiliated them instead. Taught them that and taught them this. And others taught them prejudice. Took the children away.
I said to Mr. Rudd, I appreciate what you said. It was very hard.
And he said, thank you for being with us today, and I said, thank you.
We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments and governments that have inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss on these our fellow Australians. We apologise especially for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families, their communities and their country, for the pain, suffering and hurt of these stolen generations, their descendants and for their families left behind, we say sorry. To the mothers and the fathers, the brothers and the sisters, for the breaking up of families and communities, we say sorry. And for the indignity and degradation thus inflicted on a proud people and a proud culture, we say sorry.
Really emotional and really moving as a day, because I think it's a really important step in relations between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, and it's something that we've been waiting for a very long time.
It's really quite emotional. It's a little surreal. I feel incredibly optimistic and hopeful, and gee, that's nice. That's really nice. I know it's a national apology, and it's particularly for the stolen generations. But somehow it just seems a little bit bigger than that. I think the fact that there are so many people here in Canberra and so many people from all political parties that are part of it, that it really feels much bigger than that. So I think it's a really exciting time for the Aboriginal people in this country.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to be black.
Thank you. It needs action, and all the goodwill and all the rhetoric will pale into insignificance if we don't start addressing the alarming statistics and the gaps between non-Aboriginal people and Aboriginal people in employment, education, training, health, the whole range of areas. And you know, for my kids, for my kids' kids, and for all our kids' kids, and for all our many communities, I think that this day is a significant step in the right direction. And you know, I am very, very buoyed for the future.
I travelled extensively, not only in New South Wales, but throughout the country, and I've seen some of the appalling conditions Aboriginal communities had to put up with. What I'm saying today is this is a great first step forward for the future, but it's got to be accompanied by real social justice in the delivery of services to Indigenous communities all over the country. Urban, rural, regional and remote. And that's where we'll find out how fair dinkum we are. And I'm saying all of us, because we've got to all walk shoulder to shoulder down this path to make sure that Aboriginal communities and their families are treated justly and fairly. Rudd made this promise before the election. He made this promise before the election, and I know some people who say, oh, why do you have to say sorry? I got nothing to say sorry about. Well, we all have. We've all got something to say sorry about for what happened over the last 100 years. You know, and it takes in consideration the stolen generations. It also takes into consideration the rape of the land of Indigenous Australians, and it's still going on today. Absolutely mismanagement of land, the very heart and soul of Indigenous culture. So all those sort of things are all part, I believe, of what happened here today.
It's a new dreaming. Although it's an acknowledgement, a symbolic gesture to the stolen generations, let's face it, we've all been impacted by past government policies. I myself grew up on a little reserve, a mission by the name of Nana Reserve at Country, New South Wales. I considered it to be a concentration camp. However, you know, we didn't know at the time, we were just one big happy family. We didn't know that the policies were out to, to segregate us from the wider community. But in all fairness to the stolen generations, it's about you, whoever you may be, new dreamings, like Abby said, and I think the journey's just begun, but we've got a long way to go.
Our generation does not own these actions, nor should it feel guilt for what was done, in many, but certainly not all cases, with the best of intentions. But in saying we are sorry, and deeply so, we remind ourselves that each generation lives in ignorance of the long-term consequences of its decisions and its actions. Even when motivated by inherent humanity and decency to reach out to the dispossessed in extreme adversity, our actions can have unintended consequences. As such, many decent Australians are hurt by accusations of theft in relation to their good intentions. The stories are well documented.
I heard enough of his first half and I walked away because it was... One minute you're up there, eyes are kite, next minute you're down there, he's just totally deflating.
Separation was then, and remains today, a painful but necessary part of public policy in the protection of children.
Yes, well, the second speaker in that regard, I felt he probably would have been better off had he not stood up or opened his mouth to start with. He really didn't want to say anything, and the only reason I think he said anything was because he had to. He would have been much better sitting outside having a cup of tea.
Because we've got to stop letting people hurt us. And we would have been more hurt if we would have sat there and, listened to that bullshit. And so we walked away from it. And I think that's what we've got to do now is if they, anyone like that is going to try to put it over us, well, just walk away.
One dark day on Framingham came and didn't give a damn. My mother cried, go get their dad. He came running, fighting mad. Mother's tears were falling down. Dad shaped up and stood his ground. He said, you touch my kids and you fight me. Then they took us from our family, took us away. They took us away. Snatched from our mother's breast, said this is for the best, took us away.
Another community by other children. Is this not an emergency? The most disturbing part of it being its endemic nature and Australia's apparent desensitisation to it. Yet governments responsible for delivering services and security have resisted elements of a Northern Territory-style intervention. Sexually assaulted by two men while their mothers were drinking alcohol. Another baby was stabbed by a man trying to kill her mother. So too a 10-year-old girl was gang-raped in Arakoon, the offenders going free, barely punished. A boy was raped in another community by other children. Is this not an emergency? The most disturbing part of it being its endemic nature and Australia's apparent desensitisation to it. Yet governments responsible for delivering services and security have resisted elements of a Northern Territory-style intervention.
I walked over to the trees after our great opposition leader, Mr. Brendan Nelson, started speaking, and when I got over there, the trees, all the spirits came to me, and I was everything lifted from me, and said, well, look, we don't need any more adversity. We've had enough of that in our lives, and we've had enough of all the poisons that have been brought into this country, which included the alcohol and all of the other substance. They all come from not from our culture, but from other man's culture.
What he said shouldn't have been mentioned today anyway. And it goes on in white. society, but they don't talk about it. It only seems to be us. Yeah.
It's time to reconcile. It's time to recognise the injustices of the past. It's time to say sorry. It's time to move forward together. To the stolen generations, I say the following. As Prime Minister of Australia, I am sorry. On behalf of the Government of Australia, I am sorry. On behalf of the Parliament of Australia, I am sorry. And I offer you this apology without qualification. We apologise for the hurt, the pain and suffering we, the Parliament, have caused you by the laws that previous Parliaments have enacted. We apologise for the indignity, the degradation and the humiliation these laws embodied. I know that in offering this apology on behalf of the Government and the Parliament, there is nothing I can say today that can take away the pain you have suffered personally. Whatever words I speak today, I cannot undo that. Words alone are not that powerful. Grief is a very personal thing.
Said the children came back. The children came back. Back where they understand. Back to their mother's land. The children came back. Back to their mother. Back to their father. Back to their sister, back to their brother, back to their people, back to their land. All the children came back.
And also Debbie Swan for making this possible for us. It's a shame we can't stay longer.
I think you came to Canberra for 2 days of what you really deserve. Thank you all very much, and have a good trip home, mate.
This is more or less what I have been hoping for, is for peace. Land given back, our freedom to teach our kids the right way and not the wrong way. No more heartache, no more pain, no more stripping away all rights, no more taking away our children. This is what I've been hoping and praying for, is my people to be free. We don't have to look over our shoulders no more. No more of this, no more. It means an awful lot for me, is to have this come about. It's a new start and a new beginning.
Today's apology, however inadequate, is aimed at righting past wrongs. It is also aimed at building a bridge between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. A bridge based on a real respect rather than a thinly veiled contempt.
Today it was a great turnout, and just the power of the crowd today with the cheers and the tears that was shared amongst the community of both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal was just it was a powerful sight, and it really touched my heart. To see our support within Australia and all different nationalities.
Our challenge for the future is now to cross that bridge and in so doing embrace a new partnership between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Embracing as part of that partnership expanded link-up and other critical services to help the stolen generations to trace their families, if at all possible, and to provide dignity to their lives.
The next generation will understand maybe a lot better, and we can walk around with our head up held high and be proud to be Australian.
It started to what we want to achieve. It was the first step forward to a positive and constructive future for not only our elders in the past that have been hurt, but for our youth, who are our next ambassadors, our doctors, our lawyers, our tradesmen.
think it is important for the young people to try and establish their self-esteem, their identity, and to be able to relate back and understand and recognise the impact that removal policy had on forming their future, where they've come from, where they're going, to acknowledge that and recognise the influence that policy has had on every Indigenous family in Australia.
I do Aboriginal studies as a core elective, and it's just the stuff that I learn at uni. I was amazed, and seeing this is just like there's so much more stuff that you don't know that's going on, and it's just it's a really big awakening for me.
Yeah, I work in health in the Aboriginal Medical Centre at Wyong, Eleanor Duncan Aboriginal Health Centre, and every day we deal with people who have issues, health issues, emotional, social issues, and hopefully by Mr Rudd, the Prime Minister, saying sorry, this historic day may start to heal a few people.
But the core of this partnership for the future is closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians on life expectancy, educational achievement and employment opportunities. This new partnership on closing the gap will set concrete targets for the future. Within a decade, to halve the widening gap in literacy, numeracy and employment outcomes and opportunities for Indigenous children. Within a decade, to halve the appalling gap in infant mortality rates between Indigenous and non-Indigenous children. And within a generation, to close the equally appalling 17-year life gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous when it comes to overall life expectancy.
It's an opportunity for all government agencies to review the way in which they interact with the Aboriginal people in Australia, reviewing policing methods and practices, looking at how we can better address the housing problem of overcrowding, education, working in, I think, genuine partnership with government.
I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a few months. It's going to take a few years for everything to fall into place. And people just have to be patient for that.
It did impress me very much that politicians, we've got to say we have to trust them until they come up with the goods or they don't. And I'll reserve my praise on him until such time we go further down the track and go forward.
It's given us all hope. I guess that's all we really want, is some hope, a bit of positive future. And yeah, I think it's genuine. We'll all see, won't we?
We need a new beginning. A new beginning which contains real measures of policy success or policy failure. A new beginning, a new partnership on closing the gap with sufficient flexibility not to insist on a one-size-fits-all approach for each of the hundreds of remote and regional Indigenous communities across the country, but instead allows flexible, tailored, local approaches to achieve commonly agreed national objectives that lie at the core of our proposed new partnership.
We've got the initial feeling of, yes, there's been acknowledgement and the tribute's been paid, but we haven't had time to process it through. And I think that'll probably take days, yeah.
So I cried and cried and cried, but it helped, because grandmother and mother being both stolen, and I could just, when they were talking about the stolen generation, I could just imagine Mum, out playing where she was at Karua, and black car pulled up, and a male and female officers from the Aboriginal Protection Board got out of the car, snatched her and took her, and that was it. And that's what I relived today. Yeah. So, but it was a special, special time for me.
Yeah, there was a lot of reflection today. I looked across to everybody, and they were each and every individual's family, we all got somebody taken away from us, one part of it. I linked up with one of my stolen mob today, and it was very emotional because I didn't know she existed. I really didn't know she existed. Her father died about 3 years ago, and I always wondered if that old man had any kids, and this woman just come out of the crowd straight up to me. And that was my cousin. I never ever met her before in my life.
Met my brother, but you can't bridge that gap that's there. Might be brother, sister, but there's too much lost to get that family closeness. He's a great guy, my brother, but for 60 odd years he didn't know I existed. So you can't bond immediately, if ever.
Journey of truth, and it is about their acceptance about what truly happened. And that's why I think Journey of Truth is what this trip is about. That they finally accept that these things really did happen.
And I think that, as you can see by all the reaction here, I think the people are feeling well about what happened today. And I think that's the way I feel too. I feel good in the heart, I guess, about it. And I think hopefully it changes a lot of things, especially in school curriculums now. I teach a lot in schools, but there's a lot of need for a lot more to be done if they're going to teach about true history, about what happened in our country, and for the future of all of our kids who go through school to have a proper and upbringing of the truth of our history in education. It needs to be done.
For the nation to bring the first 2 centuries of our settled history to a close as we begin a new chapter in which we embrace with pride, admiration and awe these great and ancient cultures we are blessed, truly blessed, to have among us. Cultures that provide a unique, uninterrupted human thread linking our Australian continent to the most ancient prehistory of our planet. And growing from this new respect to see our Indigenous brothers and sisters with fresh eyes, with new eyes, and with our minds wide open as to how we might tackle together the great practical challenges that Indigenous Australia faces in the future. So let us turn this page together, Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, government and opposition, Commonwealth and state, and write this new chapter in our nation's story together. First Australians, First Fleeters, and those who first took the oath of allegiance just a few weeks ago, let's grasp this opportunity to craft a new future for this great land, Australia.
Broad was his door, Vincent was lame, spoke very little, he had no backbones, hard dirt was his floor. From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
Very emotional today when Mr. Rudd was on, because all I kept thinking of my mum and my grandma, you know, and all the troubles that they went through.
It is the first step, and we have a long way to go, but at least we've stepped up one step of the ladder.
My daddy can rest in peace now. God love him.
We could feel more freer now, I feel. Yeah.
Like you said, can't take them back now.
I'll remember for the rest of my life. You?
It's one of the most, I think, significant speeches in Parliament ever.
From little things, big things grow.